So it's finally happened. Kevin Magnussen's misplacement of his own brake pedal at the Italian Grand Prix sees a Dane rewarded with a weekend off for the following race in Azerbaijan. And despite a lot of people, even his latest victim, Pierre Gasly, fighting for said decision to be overturned, frankly, this was a long time coming. It makes sense for Pierre to be concerned. Just a few years ago, the Frenchman found his own head on the chopping block. But that was back in an era when the FIA were handing out penalty points for corner cutting or looking too deeply into President Salim's finances. We should also factor 2025 in here, and I'm sure Gasly would love to see a bit more of Haas's budget spent on spare carbon fibre, as he's committed to f***ing with Esteban Ocon in any way he can. Kevin Magnussen's case is significantly different. All of his penalty points have come from on-track incidents with other drivers, and this ban should really have come way earlier in the season. Remember, he got away with his terror attack in the Monaco harbour scot-free. For some reason, I can't actually explain that one. But why are we here? Well, several years ago, Mommy and Daddy felt like making a mistake, but to be more specific, why are we in this situation right now? Well, you've got to thank another Frenchman for that. It's 2009, 15 years ago, and that fact makes me want to f***ing kill myself. We were in the middle of a swine flu pandemic, Grindr had just been launched, and Bitcoin was invented, and with it a whole generation of spineless incels who spend their days fornicating over Reddit. Alongside all of that, the Renault Formula 1 team were getting a bit sick and tired of their Nelson Piquet from Temu, and wanted to make a change. And for a French team, who better than a French driver? Actually, I can think of quite a lot, but that's what they went with anyway. Romain Grosjean was coming off the back of a win in the GP2 Asia Series. He'd also won the F3 European Championship in 2007 and French Formula Renault Championship in 2005. Now he was busy racing on the F1 support bill and the full GP2 Championship, running so well that he'd end that year 4th in the standings, despite not actually competing in the final 4 rounds of the season. That's because Romain was about to make the big step up into Formula 1. On paper, this looked like a pretty good move. In reality, there was a bit of a problem.
Under pressure, he's taking the inside.
Oh, and Crow, look at that! Romain Grosjean gets it all wrong, and that was unbelievable, and that's the accident that we've been waiting for so many years, and he's mounted the barrier, and let's hope that Romain Grosjean, the championship leader, is going to be okay.
Grosjean had a habit of hitting the wall, or other people, or anything he could find for that matter. And while this would be an issue in any series, when all the eyes of the world are on you in Formula 1, there would be no room for mistakes. Romain's F1 debut would come at the universally adored Valencia street circuit, and by universally adored, I mean everyone f***ing hated this place. Finishing a modest 14th in qualifying, Grosjean's old habits were quick to rear their head, picking up an additional passenger in the opening laps and deciding the best way to deal with this was to toe punt Luca Badoa at the bridge. Grosjean would finish down in 15th place, a whole minute behind his teammate. He might have received some stick for this, were this not his first Formula 1 race, his teammate being a certain Fernando Alonso, and that Luca Badoa was in the field and attracting a fair bit more attention. Maybe the next race in Belgium would be better. Yeah, it wasn't. Grosjean started on the back row of the grid alongside new best friend Badoa. His start would actually be pretty good though, making his way up to the back of championship leader Jenson Button before giving the brawn an unsolicited anal inspection into Les Combes. The next incident would come in Singapore, Grosjean touching the barriers again in what would have been passed off as another rookie mistake with minimal consequences, were this not the exact same corner Temu Piquet used to fix the Grand Prix for Renault in 2008. Romain's brakes gave the rest of the field a sigh of relief on Sunday when they went on strike 3 laps into the Grand Prix. The other car of Alonso, meanwhile, came home to finish on the podium, calling into question whether Romain was the right man for the job in the first place. Renault would answer that question by firing the Frenchman at the end of the season, entering 2010 with an all-new lineup of handy Robert Kubica and Vitaly Petrov. Romain's hopes of returning to the top flight of motorsport weren't dead in the water, however, opting to rejoin GP2, and finally winning that series at the 4th time of asking in 2011. Problem was, everyone had seen what Romain was capable of in F1 already. There may well have been hints of speed here and there, but this guy was good at giving you those overpriced car parts you see on F1 Authentics, and that was about it. It would take someone monumentally dense to give this guy another shot. Or French, as it would turn out. Renault, now rebranded as the Lotus F1 team, opted to give Grosjean another chance for the 2012 season. According to then team owner Gerard Lopez, this would, quote, help us achieve our aims at getting back to the very top. Clearly he's forgetting this is the guy he fired for not being quick enough 2 years ago. Grosjean himself claimed that his extended stay in GP2 had helped him mature, and that he felt like a much more complete driver on his return to Formula 1. And that would be great. If it was true, in reality, it wasn't long before Romain was back to old habits. Romain's qualifying return saw the Swiss-born Frenchman line up on the second row, a significant improvement on what had come before. That wasn't necessarily reflected in his start though, as the Lotus driver fell backwards and into the clutches of Maldonado, who stamped down his authority as the new terrorist in town and took our boy out of the running. Grosjean was able to improve on his starts come round 2 in Malaysia. Unfortunately, this is where the positives ended, as Romain made it just 4 corners before wiping both himself and Michael Schumacher out of the running. The next incident would come in Spain, a race remembered for Lord Maldonado's incredible victory. Grosjean, though, took out Sergio Perez at the start, who retaliated by taking children privileges away from his right rear mechanic. This new self-proclaimed mature Grosjean sure seemed to be looking awfully familiar to the unfinished article we saw in 2009. Granted, he had more pace now, but this only put him in the vicinity of more cars he could ping-pong into. This was obvious from the very next race in Monaco. Grosjean lined up 5th, though soon revealed himself as speedrunning the event when he didn't even make it to turn 1 before causing a multi-car pile-up. The Frenchman's antics were beginning to be noticed at this stage, which was really a huge shame, as when Romain wasn't finding things to bump into, he was finishing strongly in the points, picking up 3 podiums in the first 11 races of the season, and looking competitive against teammate and 2007 world champion Kimi Räikkönen in the other car. The silly incidents weren't going away though, and this would all come to a head at the Belgian Grand Prix. The sweeping curves around the Ardennes forest are dangerous at the best of times, not to mention when a certain little Frenchman is out there looking for blood. Grosjean will qualify 8th on the grid, surrounded by a plethora of famous names, from Sebastian Vettel to Fernando Alonso. Now, they say never meet your heroes, and I don't know about you, but I always figured it was also never a good idea to fly over your heroes at 100 miles per hour and nearly rip their f***ing hands off. In all seriousness, this crash wasn't funny. A look back at recent history paints a frightening reminder of how dangerous this place still is, and this latest crash was the straw that broke the camel's back. Actually, the camel was already on death's door and Romain had just dropped a bus on it. The FIA had finally seen enough, and on the 3rd of September 2012, just 2 hours following the conclusion of the Belgian Grand Prix, it was announced that Romain would be banned from the next round of the championship in Monza. Jerome D'Ambrosio would make a stand-in performance in the Frenchman's stead, and put in an incredibly mid-showing before the reins were handed back to the supposed reformed Romain from Singapore onwards. I'd love to say that's where the serious incidents ended, but any fan of Formula 1 knows that's just not true. In fact, it took 2 races before Grosjean was back to punting drivers into Narnia at the Japanese Grand Prix. The series of incidents were at least enough to make Formula 1 realise that something had to be done to deter drivers from putting themselves or others at serious risk. Thus, the penalty point system we still use today was introduced from 2014 onwards, and we didn't see another driver banned until K-Mag's last hurrah a couple of weeks ago. What are your thoughts on this current system though? And does Kevin deserve to be on the sidelines for this weekend? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you dropped it a like to help the channel grow. Also, if you want to see a rare case of me complimenting something Formula 1 has done, then you can check out this video using the link in the description below. A final thank you has to go out to all the patrons and channel members who get early access to this kind of content, and if you'd like to further support me, all the links are down there too. I'll be back on the weekend with coverage of both the F1 and IndyCar races, but until then, have a good one.